I started out as pre-med. Back in
Awesome.
college. I actually was one of those people that shadowed from the moment I was born. Like I
Oh,
was in
wow.
love with medicine. It was, I don't even know I can't remember what it was that actually like prompted me to want to be in hospital and like working with doctors all day. But I started when I was probably in like middle school.
Wow.
Yeah. I think I saw my first beating heart when I was like early teen.
Wow.
I feel like it's very strange, just like combo of interests that I've had in my life, but
Yeah,
here
yeah.
we are.
Have you enjoyed listening to the IncrediPaul podcast? Are you looking for a way to support it? Or maybe you just want some swag? Check out the IncrediPaul store today. We have shirts, hoodies, sweatshirts, hats, stickers, and so much more. Go to IncrediPaul.org, IncrediPaul.org, and click on the store link. Or go to the link in my socials bio and click on the IncrediPaul shop. Looking forward to seeing your IncrediPaul look.
I'm really excited about this episode of IncrediPaul. I have a really special guest that I know you're going to love. Stream on YouTube, just search I Am IncrediPaul or IncrediPaul Podcast. It will come up. And wherever you are listening to this, whether it's on Spotify, on Apple Music, Google Play, Amazon Music, make sure you rate and review the podcast, because I want to make sure that I'm adding the value to you that you are trying to see. If there's any guests you're looking for or any topics you want me to hit on, definitely let me know, because I want to make sure I can help you and ourselves become the most incredible versions. Keep being incredible.
Turn this up, turn this up.
Your professional development is one of the keys to your career success. When you combine your desire to grow with actionable steps, your journey to success becomes an incredible reality. Welcome to the IncrediPaul podcast. And now, sharing his expertise, experience, and excellence with the world, here's your host, Paul Ferranbi.
Hi, I'm Paul Ferranbi, and welcome to the IncrediPaul podcast, where we learn how to become the best versions of ourselves by learning from each other. Today, I'm super excited to have Dr. Chrissy on the podcast today. She is the founder and CEO of Reflecting Equity. Can you share a little bit more about that and about yourself as a whole?
Yes. First of all, thank you for having me. So
Of
good to be
course.
here. I know we've talked so much in the past, but it's so good to see you for the
Yeah.
first time virtually.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a company that does equity and inclusion consulting. And as you mentioned, we're called Reflecting Equity. And this really spun out of a lot of my PhD work, which I guess
Awesome.
we'll probably talk about a little more.
Yeah.
But yeah, we basically help communities, whether they're academic or technology or industry focused,
Wow.
understand kind of what their community members are feeling and kind of bridge the gap between people who make decisions and the people that typically don't get a say in those decisions. So we really make all of the work we do community focused and making sure that we're prioritizing the needs of whether that's students or employees or both. To make the community more inclusive and safer and more well-being focused place to work.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I think you kind of mentioned it with your PhD work, but what kind of drove you into this direction as far as founding a company? Not everyone is founding companies.
Yeah. Yeah. It was actually all kind of, I don't really like the word circumstantial, but it kind of was like the next thing that felt natural.
Yeah.
So I got my PhD in chemistry, and half of my dissertation is in physical chemistry and like what I kind of started my PhD in. And then along the way, I realized that there was a lot of aspects of the program and just like my identity in science that felt like I was not really fitting into the culture of the program, and like a couple of things with my mentor like didn't go well, and so I was kind of left feeling like this was not the experience that I envisioned myself having for kind of like being so in love with the science. I was like, I'm not actually feeling this very much.
Oh man.
And so in that route, I found a way to start working with one of the grad student committees that was in the department to assess our own department culture and climate. And then that kind of spun off into an initiative that really helped like refocus the priorities of students and the concerns of students into a way to change the program and make it better for everyone. And along the same lines, like in doing that work, we found new avenues for communicating across the kind of like traditional power dynamics in academia. So we found some ways to make sure that we could communicate the needs of students to faculty and like make that doorway open so that it didn't feel like we were always like fighting to be heard or like demanding things from the faculty, but it was more like a collaborative process to prioritize student wellness. And so like I ended up switching groups and doing that work in grad school. And then by the time I graduated, which was in 2020, everything was remote and I was, so I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do next. I ended up taking a staff role. Actually, originally I was looking for postdocs, but the interviews I had like didn't go anywhere because I basically interviewed like a week before everything shut down.
Oh man, no.
I know. Yeah. So I ended up not taking any of those postdocs because the money just like dried up or whatever you want to call it. And then I ended up taking a staff job at Berkeley, also in the chemistry department, but it ended up not being what I really wanted. And at the same time, because I had published all of the work that I did with the chemistry department, a lot of academic communities were asking me if I could help them or like work with them to write a climate survey or do similar work. And so I kind of transitioned from my staff job into consulting the following year, like a year later. And so, so I had a side hustle for a while and tried it out and saw how it went. And now I'm full time.
That's amazing.
So, it's very exciting. It's kind of like long-winded, but
no, that's perfect. Just like how it all came together. So I'm curious as far as what was that transition like from it being the side hustle and being as part of the staff to going into full-time?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think there's like a couple of like perks, and then I think some things have been really challenging. The biggest perk for me was having a little bit more control over like how I can execute work with people that I want to work with.
Are you wondering what's next? Has everything you tried failed? Or maybe you just feel stuck? Then coaching might be right for you. The coaching relationship is a relationship totally centered on you. If you're tired of running on the hamster wheel of life and want to start to see results, reach out to IncrediPaul for help. So what are you waiting for? Go to IncrediPaul.org/coaching, IncrediPaul.org/coaching, or at IamIncrediPaul on all my socials. Or you can click the link in the bio for your free coaching session. I want to make sure you become the most incredible version of yourself.
And not, I guess, kind of like choosing for myself, like what challenges I want to put myself into and like try and resolve and help people work through versus feeling like I'm fighting an uphill battle in a community that maybe doesn't want me there or like hired me for something that doesn't align with my values. And I think a lot of people face that issue. And so I feel really privileged actually to like have been in a position to just like step out of that and basically take my own company forward and kind of pick and choose who I work with. So that's actually been a huge value add. And I feel like my confidence has grown so much in doing that, which is really cool. And my value, not just my confidence. Things I never would have thought as a grad student, like looking at me now being like, oh my gosh, you got there. Which is very cool. Awesome. I think the challenges are like working alone in more than just like like an individual at a desk, right? Like I'm responsible for my company and like I'm responsible for making money for myself. And like, that's really hard. So that has been a challenge, but I also feel very lucky that people know who I am because I did publish all this work. And so I have gotten like a lot of word of mouth clients, which is really cool.
That's good.
But it is scary sometimes to just be like, well, I have to find a way to make money. Like I have to find clients and like yeah, knowing if I'm charging enough and like knowing if I'm
Mm,
doing the right amount of engagements or things like
mm.
that. So that's kind of an ongoing challenge.
Yes, for sure. I can only imagine that there's a lot of
Mm.
imposter syndrome that comes with that, especially when you first start. I know I have experience and still experience it with the stuff that I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And that like it changes the imposter feelings of like
Mm,
from being like, am I really like doing this work right? In grad
mm.
school, for example, being like, I don't know if I'm good enough to be here. And now it's like I'm actually charging people for like what I assume my professional worth is. And
Yeah,
like, did I judge that correctly? Like,
yeah.
am I crazy? Like, I don't know. It's like a whole nother level of like,
Mhm,
yeah. So it's been a little bit hard, but I don't know. We're working through it. Here we
for,
are. Yeah.
for sure. So as far
Mm.
as reflecting equity is concerned, do you more work with contractors or do you have any staff under you that you work with on a consistent basis?
Oh yeah, that's a really good question. I have some contractors, primarily people who have been helping me with social media,
Okay.
and then also people that do data analysis for me.
Oh, awesome.
Um, so sometimes I guess my engagements with clients vary depending on their needs, but
Okay.
for the most part, I try to do like a data collection phase through either a survey or like focus groups or interviews. And then we'll go into next steps and like doing interventions and things that will help them.
Hmm.
So if I collect a lot of survey data, then I typically need somebody to do the analysis for me because I'm just not like computationally savvy in that way.
Fair enough. You
um,
can't do everything.
yeah. So, and it would just take me way too long. So, yeah, but I don't have any employees right now. It's just me.
Right.
Uh, yeah, and then I have people like other consultants that I'll partner with on projects sometimes,
Nice.
and then we'll kind of decide like who subcontracts who and like how that
Mhm.
professional relationship ends up working logistically. But it's really nice to have a community of people that are doing similar work that can like supplement each other's strengths, that are not necessarily in the same company. It's really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you've worked with a lot of different people and companies and probably putting you on the spot a little. So I'll give you some time if you need it. As far if there's any companies or individuals
Mhm,
that you worked with, as far as a lot of the work that you do in the DEI space, as far as
mhm,
if there's any like aha transformational stories that kind of stuck out to you with some of the people you work
mm.
with.
That's a really good question. I guess my initial answer, yeah, I guess I have two parts to the answer. So initially, the first thing that comes to mind is like I feel like the more I do this work, especially with more different communities,
Mhm.
there's like patterns that come up that I'm like, oh, I keep getting asked this question, or like, oh, I keep seeing
Mm.
this pattern emerge from the data, or like something like that. And then it kind of prompts me to be like, should I be offering something specific about communication, for example? That's something that comes up a
Mm.
lot. Like, how do we communicate across power dynamics in a way that can like diffuse tension and be helpful for everybody involved?
Yeah.
Um, and then so that's kind of like an aha moment I've had where I'm like, yes, communities are still unique and like their needs are still unique, but there are definitely patterns that come up of like how to approach a particular topic that is an issue that comes up like in a lot of different contexts. So
Mhm.
that's really cool. Um, I guess I can't name clients, but the
Yeah,
one,
that's fair.
my original like project that kind of got me started on this was in Berkeley chemistry. So like all the work that I published on that was kind of a game changer for, I guess, me knowing that I can have an impact in communities, and then also knowing that there's so much to be said about like kind of persisting in your efforts to improve equity and inclusion.
Yeah.
Because at the time, like everything I was doing, I knew it was helpful just because people were like, oh, thank you for doing this and stuff. But I never
Mm.
actually saw the impact until like my third year doing that work. Um,
Wow.
and at the end of doing surveys and like doing interventions and doing town halls and like making sure that we were using the data in a very functional and like pragmatic way,
Mhm.
we did see changes in how people were perceiving the climate. And so that was actually really awesome because I was like, oh my gosh, like I haven't been doing this work in vain. This is so cool.
That's good.
Um, and I've only had my company for 2 years, so I haven't had that same kind of like long-term trajectory with any given client since then.
Fair.
But my goal is to have like a series of long-term clients that I can work on climate and culture stuff with, and really like help them measure an improvement in how their people feel.
Awesome. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah,
So-
thank you.
I love that. That's super cool.
Yeah.
So do you primarily work with people in STEM, or is it across the board?
So far, the majority have been in STEM. The majority have also been in academia, but I have
Okay.
started working with small like tech startups,
Oh,
which is actually really fascinating because I feel like their ability to integrate new ways of like building structure in the company is just very different from academia. And so it's cool to like help them in that process.
yeah.
Really, yeah, nothing I ever thought I would have an in-depth understanding of, which is cool. And then I've actually started helping people in the arts kind of like define their community values and their community norms for a company. And I've done this for some tech companies also, but
Nice.
like kind of starting from the ground up and being like, how are we planning on bringing people on board and like having them interact with each other, and how are we holding our values forward and like making sure we're communicating them from the beginning of hiring people.
Mhm.
Which is something I've always thought about, but never got the chance to like put into practice until very recently. So that's been cool. And the more I like work with people, the more I'm like, yes, I have an understanding of STEM and like I speak the language, but
Yeah.
some of the issues that we have in equity space, like in making spaces equitable and inclusive, are the same everywhere. So
Mm,
it doesn't take like a particular science skill set to kind of like work with that community, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
mhm.
So yeah, it's been cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I definitely agree with that. People are people. It's just they do different things and there's different technical skills when it all comes down to it. Well, human nature is pretty similar across the board, even across cultures.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
that's interesting. So I'm curious. I know you kind of mentioned from when you're in your PhD and kind of switching the focus of what you were doing.
Mhm.
Did you always know you were going to pursue a PhD, or kind of talk me through your educational pathway?
Yeah. That's a
Yeah.
really good question. I feel like, I don't know, kind of similar to like my career path.
Yeah.
Everything was kind of just like, oh, the next thing is happening.
Mhm.
So I started out as pre-med back in
Awesome.
college. I like actually was one of those people that shadowed from the moment I was born. Like I
Oh
was
wow.
in love with medicine. It was, I don't even know like what, I can't remember what it was that actually like prompted me to want to be in hospitals and like working with doctors all day, but I started when I was probably in like middle school.
Wow.
Yeah. I think I saw my first beating heart when I was like early teen.
Wow.
I would, yeah, I feel like it's very strange, just like combo of interests that I've had in my life, but
Yeah.
here
Yeah.
we are. Yeah, I love the body. I think it's amazing, and like everything that it does for us is just like, yeah. So I was pre-med probably until midway through college. And I studied abroad in Scotland for
Oh
one
wow.
year, like my junior year of college.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I actually like, I guess, fell in love with chemistry. I don't know, that's like really cliche to say, but I took a class that was really small, and like the people that I took the class with were really welcoming, and it was like very collaborative, and the professor was awesome, and she gave me an opportunity to work in her lab for that like semester that I was there. And
Mhm.
yeah, it just like it felt like a very different community space, I guess,
Yeah.
or like just a different environment than what I had in my home university. And so I was like, oh, actually chemistry is cool, and like away from the pressure of having to be the top in your class of like a bunch of
Mm,
pre-meds. It was
yeah.
like which actually was so stressful. So I like stepped away from that, and I was like, wow, chemistry is really cool. And so then when I got back from Scotland, I kind of kept working in the lab, and then decided that I think the way that I had experienced the medical system that far, even though I was like in love with it, I also felt like I didn't want to be part of it kind of as a career, and like thinking about how I'd have to go through training and the burnout that I had heard about and like
Yeah.
experienced, kind of, yeah, was just, I was like, this is actually probably not for me. So yeah, so I stayed in chemistry, and I actually majored in neuroscience because I was like, the brain is still very
wow.
cool.
That's super cool.
Yeah, but then I also was like, if I do a PhD, I don't really want to depend on like an animal or an animal model for my data collection.
Yeah.
Which retrospectively I was like, man, that was a wise choice. Like, I don't know. But just from like friends I have that have like worked with animals, so like cool. I like took one for future needs at the time. So
Yeah,
cool.
there you go. You just looked in the future, you already knew.
I know, it's so funny. Yeah.
No, that's really cool. It's funny because my background is actually in chemical engineering.
Oh,
So
cool.
I love chemistry as well. Probably not as much as you, but I do love chemistry, as opposed to most engineers that hate chemistry.
That's fair.
And coming in, I actually was, I guess you don't really declare pre-med, but I was thinking pre-med going to med school. And then I fell in love with research the first year, and I stuck with chemical engineering.
Yeah. Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I love that. Was your school also like so intense on the pre-med and like the studying with other people? And is it hard?
Oh yeah, it was. Everyone was super competitive on everything.
Yeah.
Oh, what did you get? Did you get this? All right. Did you get? I got 96. I got 98. Or it's like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. People were always like, I can't study with you because then you'll do better than me. Like,
Yeah.
that is just not, it's like, is this normal? I didn't know. So I thought it was normal actually for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, it was not the greatest environment. And I was like, and research, and I love research. I still love research. I don't get to do nearly as much of it now, but anytime I get to go to conferences and talk to students or graduates about their research, it's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so cool.
So I'm curious because I know that you have what you do for your job. Are there any other things that you're passionate about outside of your job or chemistry that you do?
Like hobbies or just
Yeah,
other,
hobbies or anything.
cool. Yes, I dance. I
Oh
do
wow.
various like styles of dance. I used to salsa dance in college.
Wow.
But I've been pole dancing recently actually, which is super fun.
Yeah.
I hate working out, so I've always had to like okay, like just going to the gym and like just using the gym. Like I can't do that. So I've had to pair it with like an activity.
Yeah.
So I got into Zumba for a while, but I
Okay.
actually love the community of pole dancing. It's just like the community, the people, the actual activity, and like feeling like I'm getting stronger every day is really cool.
Yeah.
And then I got really into the chemistry of wine when I was a grad student.
Oh wow.
Because so I was an analytical chemist when I started my PhD, and I have no like wet chemistry skills whatsoever. But I did always love organic chemistry, like when I was studying it. And so I feel like when I got into wine, I like started reading books about the compounds in wine and like what gives it its flavor and like tannins and all of that. And I was like, oh, this is like the thing that I loved about organic chemistry that's not actually like making things. Kind of like came out and learning about wine. So that's a hobby that I have. And I feel like being in California is actually great for displaying like wine
Oh
tasting.
yeah. There's a lot of wine country.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I love wine. It's really great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I know absolutely nothing about pole dancing. It looks really cool. I feel like I'm way too big and not flexible enough for it.
You gain all those skills as you go. Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say. So what is something about pole dancing that you think most people don't know, or something you learned when you started doing it?
I mean, I feel like there's a lot of I guess like a lot of things that I don't think would come to people's first minds when they hear about pole dancing. I think a lot of people just associate it with like adult performance and stripping and sex work, but there's such a big part of the whole community that's just really about like body acceptance and body positivity and like sex positivity and just
Yeah.
like being who you are, and nobody really cares. Like I remember for the first probably like 2 months that I pole danced, every time I would go to a class, like I would meet people and start like forming relationships, and nobody like for like probably actually more than 2 months, for probably like 6 months, nobody asked me what I did for work. And I was like,
Oh,
this
wow.
is so nice. Like, because I feel like there's some spaces in science, especially where
Oh.
you're expected to just enter and have your elevator pitch like ready. And it was just very freeing to like be like, I'm just a person, and like my value isn't based on my work at all. And like that's actually really nice and very freeing, especially from having been a grad student where like it's the
Oh,
complete opposite.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's really nice. And then apart from that, like the people are just so welcoming and amazing. And like everybody's just really like into what's good for your body and what feels good, not just like some standard you have to reach or like some goal. It's more about just like what feels good right now. And like I'm also not flexible. So that was really great being like, oh, you're teaching this move where like I need to have a split, but like I can't do that. So I'm gonna do something else. And that's cool.
Okay. Well, that's good. That sounds
Yeah.
very empowering.
Yeah. It has been really empowering.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. I love that. I learned
Yeah.
something new today because I did not know that.
Yes. How awesome. Happy to have shared that knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then I'm wondering, I feel like I kind of know the answer to this a little bit, but what does your typical day or week look like? I'm thinking it's not that typical, but like,
Yeah. Yeah. I guess probably the majority of the time I am just working on my computer. Um, so I have a dog, so my typical day when I'm home is like I'll walk my dog. My partner and I take turns, so I'll either do the morning walk or the afternoon walk. And then around that, I'll be answering emails. I've actually been very intentional starting this year about making my meeting times kind of only like in the middle of the day so that I can accommodate Eastern time and Pacific time. And so that gives me probably like 2 hours in the morning to do emails and like concentration work, and then end my like intense work day with meetings and stuff around 3 or 4. And so, yeah, because I feel like longer than that, I'm just not productive. And I like really enjoy having time, especially if it's sunny out. Like I enjoy time on a walk or something like that. So I've tried to be, more intentional about just like knowing when my brain is optimally functioning.
oh yeah.
Which is hard because I feel like that was also not a skill I got in grad school. It's just like work all the time.
Yeah, I was like all
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, and then sometimes I will travel a lot for clients. So I had a couple of trips earlier this year, and then I'm going also on a client trip next week. So I'll just be traveling the whole time. In which case my days are like go to the airport and do emails and then get up at a really nice hotel and like spend the day with people. So that's always really fun too, like forming those connections that are not just virtual.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
So that made me think of something as far as like things not being virtual now. I don't know, as far as the clients you work with, are more people more receptive to being in person? And when did you start to see more of that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So in California, and I guess I'll preface this with I go back and forth between Florida and California a bunch because my company is based in Florida.
Oh wow.
But my partner needs to be in California, so I like split my time.
Okay.
And in Florida, I would say nobody really ever. I won't go into the politics of that.
Yeah, I think everyone anyone that was around during the pandemic knows Florida shut down for maybe a couple of weeks, and then
Yeah,
there's open season for any.
I know. Yeah, it was kind of like whiplash, honestly. Like every time I would go back, I was like, oh my goodness, this is like yeah.
Wow, yeah.
And then in California, I guess like probably starting, when did I start doing travel? Probably like mid 2020. Because I went full time July 2020. So I did a lot of traveling between like August and October. And people were doing, for the most part, fully in-person events, but masks were still as required as they could be for folks in the community. And it was definitely strange. Like the first time I like traveled and I was like, okay, I'm used to flying because I would go to my mom's house in Florida a lot. But then like going to a hotel and being like, where's my, like, where do I put my mask on? Like, what's the policy?
Oh,
Like, how do
yeah.
how do I navigate this? So like, yeah, flying out for a client was like very just like logistically weird.
Okay.
But once I get to events, like, I don't know, walking down the hallway or whatever, I don't know, logistics of masking and stuff is like dependent on the person. But then when you got to an event, they like require you to put a mask on and stuff. So
Yeah.
I think it's changed very regularly and frequently since then. I feel like you never know, but I typically wear masks because I'm just more comfortable. But and it's also hard to like give a seminar, for example, with a mask on. So there's always
Yeah.
you're like, hang on, let me drink water, and then you have to like take your mask off and like drink, and then it's like when you're in the spotlight, it's like additional stress. But
oh my goodness. I
yeah,
definitely
yeah. But how was you were at a conference recently, right? How was the mask? Like, how was the whole
yeah.
COVID
So
policy?
yeah, I was not at a mass. We're just talking about mass. I was at a conference. Then I don't know if you're familiar with NSB or not, but they had their annual convention in Kansas City. So I went out for that. And so masks were encouraged, but really in the state of Missouri, no one has really been wearing masks here, at least for last year. I think like mid 2022, or even before that, depending on where you go, they haven't had mask mandates in a while. And most people at the conference weren't wearing a mask. I wasn't either, but at the same time, I always keep hand sanitizer on deck, and I don't. I mean, it's a larger conference, but I'm just aware of like the people around me and things like that. But
Yeah, absolutely.
It's pretty much just back to normal. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I guess flying to different spaces and being like, okay, this is a change from my routine, and like, what's the comfort level? Do I ask people? Like, yeah. So, kind of working. What is it called? I don't know, being adaptable or
Oh yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely with travel and different locations. I used to travel a ton for work. I don't now, which is a good change of pace to being in different places like every week, and like, oh, this, especially during the pandemic, it shut down. I stopped traveling for like, I think a month, maybe 2 months tops, and then full scale by the end of May, I was traveling like at least 50% of the time up into when I transitioned to a new job the end of last year. So it was just interesting to see how things evolve through. Some places were really strict about the mask wearing and social distancing.
Yeah.
And then I did go to Florida once during that time, and Florida was like, nothing has ever changed. I think I wore a mask and everyone was looking at me like I had COVID.
Yeah.
I was like, okay,
Yeah.
it's a different world down here.
I know. It's totally, yeah. That's very strange. My mom's in Miami, so
Oh, wow.
it's like a very, I don't know. Yeah. Nobody, yeah. People with masks are like, people look at them weird. It's like,
Yeah.
what are you doing?
It's like,
You have a different reality from me.
yeah, it's like, you're not from around here, are you?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's so interesting.
Yeah, definitely. So, if you could go back to when you were starting your company, or even doing some of your research that kind of got you focused
Mhm.
on the DEI space, what would you tell yourself as far as
Mhm.
um, kind of like the research you're doing? I don't know if there's anything that happened when you're doing your research that either felt frustrating or you're trying to just get through. Just
Yeah.
kind of like reflecting back, what are some things you've learned?
The biggest thing that came up as you were asking that question was like being aware of burnout. Um,
Mm,
I guess so. I've been through a lot of stages of like self-awareness of like
mhm,
when I'm getting exhausted or like just feeling, I don't know, like general sadness because of burnout or things like that.
mm,
And I feel like I didn't have a lot of those tools to like become more aware when I was a grad student.
mm,
And I think everybody like learns and grows into their understanding of their body and things like that. But
mhm.
I feel like retrospectively, like I took so much on just like
Oh.
outside of my own research, but like really taking on like the emotional, it's not really a burden because it never felt negative to me, but
Mhm.
just like taking on a lot of the like harm that people in my community were experiencing and like trying to find a
Okay.
way to fix it
Wow.
and just like holding space for people. I didn't realize like how much of a toll it took on me until I graduated and I was like, wow, I am like exhausted and burnt out in a way that
Mhm.
I like had never felt before. Um, and then it didn't happen again, but when I quit my job and went full time with Reflecting Equity, I spent an entire month traveling for clients.
Oh,
And
wow.
in when I was planning it, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Like I'm
Mhm,
gonna go to all these new places and meet all these
mhm.
new people and like be in community spaces that I love. But by the time I like went to my last trip, I was so tired of packing my suitcase that I was like, I need to preemptively tell myself, like I need to write a note to future me that's like, Chrissy, one trip at a time. Like don't do this. So it was like burnout in a different way from the grad school burnout.
Mm.
Um, so I feel like, yeah, going back and being like, just be careful with your, like your emotional capacity and like the weight that you're carrying because doing equity work is hard and like
Mm.
takes a big emotional toll on people. And even if it's not an emotional toll, it's like you're still holding space for people that like need to learn and like want to learn and
Mm.
want to have community with you, but it does take a toll on your like mental and physical well-being. So I guess just like go back and tell myself to be conscious of that and like prioritize yourself and like do what you need to do to kind of process all of that.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, which I know is a huge, like it's a big,
Yeah.
a big lesson I've learned. But yeah, and I don't think I would have been, like, sometimes people give you advice and you're like, "Psh, whatever, like I don't need that."
I got this. That's fine.
And you're like, oh, they were right. Yeah, just kidding.
Yeah. Wow.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's so interesting as far as all that stuff you learn. I say it's interesting just because some stuff with Nala, we're planning to do kind of a doing a summer summit based on professional wellness,
mhm,
because we realize that's something that none of us are really taught as far
yeah,
as how to balance it, especially what you were saying in grad school. I feel like it's definitely the opposite, that you have literally no time for yourself. It's all about the research, getting
yeah,
um, publications out, all of that
yeah,
stuff. And you definitely need that balance so you don't burn out.
yeah, absolutely. And it's hard to see it from an outsider's view, like when you're in it, you're like, it's not that bad, or like it's,
Mm,
like I'm okay. But it's always
mhm.
good to like really stop and be like, okay, how am I feeling? Like, what do I need? And it's hard when the norm, like the social norms of grad school are just like kind of don't listen to yourself and like keep
Yeah.
pushing and being productive. And so it's like very
Mhm.
counterintuitive to have that foresight.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So we're about out of time. It definitely flew by.
Yes.
But is there anything I haven't asked you about or you haven't talked about that you want to talk about?
Ooh. feel like my mind just goes blank when I have all the things in the world to pick from.
Yeah. Or anything
Um,
you want people to know
yeah.
about you.
I don't know if you're gonna do like a shout out, but like I could do like follow us on socials and engage with us.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, I know nothing came to mind that was like out there, but I still love brains and I love the human body. So that's
Awesome.
something to keep in mind.
Mhm.
Yeah, but then please follow us. So I think we're less active on Twitter, but we're at Reflect Equity on Twitter if that's your platform of choice.
Yeah.
We're at Reflecting Equity on Instagram and then also on TikTok. We're trying to like do the video reel, whatever TikTok's game
Yeah.
now.
Cool.
And then our website is reflectingequity.com. So yeah, please, I don't know, check us out, follow us, engage with us. We do a lot of like community gathering, like I don't know, community building on the socials.
Awesome. And I'll put a link to this because it's on YouTube. So those of you who are listening, definitely go to the YouTube channel. That's new this year. Go on YouTube.
Yes.
So
Yay.
I'll put links to all your socials there, and on Instagram as well, LinkedIn, put it everywhere so people know how to connect on the incredible work you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah, for
Yes.
sure. Yeah,
Cool.
thanks again for being on the podcast. I really enjoyed this conversation, learning about how you even got into the diversity, equity, and inclusion work, what you went through as far as establishing a company, working through balancing your time, working through imposter syndrome. And I think we already mentioned that stuff that we just always, well, I think not that it's only minorities, but I feel like us as minorities feel it more than the average person. I think it's important to talk about it, that people don't, it's called imposter syndrome because people feel like they don't belong, and people need to know that everyone feels like that at some point. So.
Yeah, and creating spaces for that to just be like a normal part of conversation, I feel like is so important for fostering that belonging and making people feel like they're not alone.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yes. I hope everyone that's listening or watching that you got something out of this podcast, and just keep being incredible.
Thank you for listening to the IncrediPaul podcast with Paul Ferranbi. We hope you enjoyed. Be sure to rate and review this podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform. We'll see you here next time. And be incredible.